Easy, welcome to the Asylum. It's me, Gunnar, in a chair of destiny. Joined this week by my able compatriot CK. Hey up, fella.
Hello.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, very well.
Good.
Excited. Yeah.
Good week, my friend. What have you been up to? I know you went somewhere last week. Oh, look at this.
Got the Megalithomaniac t-shirt.
Look at this. It's a good job you're the size you are, Chris, because that wouldn't have fitted on normally, would it?
No, well, this is XL, so I don't know what sizes they were,
Can you get Megalithomaniac on a small? I don't think it'll fit.
I don't think it'll fit on small. I don't think that's a general worry.
So you went to Megalithomania?
The clientele of Megalithomania. No, I went to Megalithomania. It was a lot of fun, really enlightening. Some great speakers. I know we spoke to Hugh about it recently. I thought it was really well done. Learned a lot about Stonehenge and quite a lot of megalithic sites that tied a lot together for me personally. Okay. And I think talking to other people around the conference, they felt the same way. They felt that they'd learned a lot.
What did you really enjoy, fella?
Richard Cassaro was really good. Talking about the triptych temples and the symbology and how he thinks it's connected to an ancient religion, and how Freemasonry and a couple of us are the continuation of that ancient religion. It was a really interesting
talk. Rub it in a little bit. Just rub it in that I didn't go because I was poorly. Just rub it in a little bit. Who else did you enjoy, my friend?
Hugh Newman was very good. Andrew Collins was there, as always. Andrew Collins, as our guest tonight will attest, is always a great speaker with a lot of really interesting information. I think it just in general, just every talk was good. JJ Ainsworth made her debut. That was her first talk. So I think good confidence builder for her. I'm sure first of many.
Okay, what stood out for you, buddy? I know you saw what's his name on the Sunday, didn't you? Gary Biddulph. What was he talking about?
Was really interesting, especially for those of us who are Staffordshire based. But he talked about cosmology and the building of sacred sites, and how a lot of British sites are built. So sort of Scotland, Britain, Ireland were all built on this cosmological idea of a central region and then 4 outlying regions around that. And then in the center of each one would be a shrine found by the geomancers, and that would be called the navel.
Right.
The navel of England, navel of Britain. Navel of Britain was the Isle of Man. Navel of England, there were a few claims. One was in Warwickshire, one was Lichfield in Staffordshire.
I expected.
And a few other places around there. So one was on the border of Leicestershire as well.
Okay.
Very interesting talk. It's obviously especially for us because, lots of things about Lichfield, and Lichfield and Tamworth. Because of course Tamworth Castle.
I'm so good.
The Burrs and a lot of that sort of stuff. So really, really interesting stuff.
Now, we've got the perfect guest for this tonight, buddy, to talk about this sort of stuff. Interestingly,
we've got the man.
We've got Graham Phillips on the line. Good evening, Graham.
Good evening.
How are you, my friend?
Very well. Please excuse me that I haven't had a shave, but I didn't actually realise that.
Don't worry about it. We're just as bad. I did rustle you into the camera thing last minute.
You're supposed to look like that.
Bedraggled, windswept, and a little bit unkempt. That's how we look, isn't it, Chris? More often than not.
Unkempt, I'm going with that one. Yeah.
So,
when you get to my age, just having a beard just makes you look like you've got out of bed.
Oh, every day.
When you're young and you've got a beard, you're cool.
It's okay when it's. Chris, yours is obviously Viking sunsetting colour, which is way better than my grey, because my grey just makes me look like I've got a dirty face all the time.
You have to get some of that just for men beard stuff.
Oh, mate, I would have if I'd have had time. Graham, we were just talking a second ago about Lichfield. Lichfield, if I'm correct, and you were saying, Chris, about it being in the centre of the country. I believe that's why Captain Smith's, so from the Titanic, the captain of the Titanic, Captain Smith, his statue is in Lichfield because of the rather lame excuse that it is halfway between London and Belfast or something, is it? Or London and Liverpool, I think. Where the Titanic initially was kind of sailed from, I think. Actually, the reason why he's really in Lichfield is because Stoke didn't want anything to do with him, and that was the excuse given to the people of Lichfield before they put the statue up, as in basically no one else wants him, so you got to have him. Do you know anything about that, Graham?
No.
Yes. Now, you are a bit of an expert, aren't you, on the local area here in Staffordshire?
Yeah, the only connection I've had with the Titanic is some people may have seen the TV documentary that was made about my search for this staff of Moses. Staff that, according to the Bible, is said to have parted the Red Sea and brought down the plagues of Egypt upon the Pharaoh. Well, the staff that Moses is said to have used is supposedly buried with his body, and the location of, or a proposed location of Moses' grave, was discovered in the Sinai wilderness in the 1800s, and a staff was found in the grave. What happened to the body, who knows? But I spent ages trying to trace up this staff, whether or not it really did belong to the historical Moses. There's a fair amount of evidence that it could have belonged to somebody upon whom the story of Moses was based. These guys in the middle 1800s certainly believed that it belonged to Moses. And I was trying to trace what happened to it. Discovered that it was put on the Titanic bound for America by some antiquities dealer, and thought that it was at the bottom of the ocean. But by some miracle, when the Titanic set off from Southampton, it didn't sail directly to New York. It stopped off at Ireland first to pick up more passengers. And this guy decided to get off and go for a holiday for a few days in Ireland before catching another boat onto America. And because of that, the staff survived. And it ended up, I mean, I literally traveled halfway around Europe and the Middle East trying to discover what had happened to this staff. And it ended up in Birmingham Museum, about a few hundred feet from where I'd actually started doing the research in Birmingham Library.
Wow.
So where else would you expect the staff of Moses to be? You know?
Yeah, in Birmingham.
Where else would it be?
That's the only Titanic stuff I've ever come across.
Oh, okay. Okay, Graham. So we're going to talk to you today a little bit about Cannock Chase, some of the local area. Dude, what have you been up to recently? The last time we interviewed you, your recent book had just come out, which is The Lost Tomb of King Arthur, which is another brilliant read. Of course, just to give a little bit of background, Graham Phillips, you have been described as a historical detective, a modern-day adventurer, a real-life Indiana Jones. Whether people agree with your conclusions or not, your findings are original and always thought-provoking, and your books are an excellent read. And I might add as well, you are the best speaker I heard in 2017. Fact.
Oh, that's very, very kind of you.
It's true. Probably... Dude, you come with that attitude of you have a laugh and a joke, don't you? You take the research and the information seriously, but you're a very personable character as well, I think.
Well, I suppose it's just my age. The days when I grew up, everybody used to sort of be out of their face on something. So I suppose, hippie days for you.
Hippie days for you. So what you've been up recently since the hippie days, can you remember?
The latest thing I've been researching is Biddulph Grange, which is in the north of Staffordshire, the very north, right on the border with Cheshire. And Biddulph Grange in the 19th century was the home of a secret society led by, unusually for the time in the late 1800s, led by a woman called Mary Heath, who was the daughter of the person who actually owned Biddulph Grange, but he was kind of rather old and decrepit and let her run the estate for him. And her and a close friend of hers, a Robert Bateman, who was a pre-Raphaelite painter, basically lived there together. Now, we don't know what kind of relationship they had other than friendship. They certainly never married each other. But both families, her family and his, the Heaths and the Batemans, owned the Biddulph Grange and developed it between them. And around the house, they created these amazing gardens, which some people may be familiar with, going around and seeing these wonderful flowers and trees that are there. But in amongst the scenic gardens, they created these, what people would describe as follies, like a Chinese pagoda-like buildings. And there's an Egyptian temple. Now, from what the research we've been doing recently...
Was that mentioned in this particular book, Graham?
It is. That's how it started off. The Green Stone, which was actually in the early 1980s. And now at that time, when we found there was a secret society that had built all these strange Egyptian temples in order to perform rituals of some type, how we found this out is that some of the people who were involved in this secret society, which is known as the Order of Nehemiah, some of them, their grandchildren were still alive. and we interviewed some of these people, got a rough idea about what was going on. When we first visited Biddulph Grange to sort of see if we could find out what was left of the place where this secret society had met, it was at that point a convalescent hospital. And the surrounding gardens that had been created in the 1800s were just a complete ruin. That was just all these, this Egyptian temple and so forth was in ruins. There was undergrowth everywhere. Trees are just, the whole thing was a mess. We drew attention to it in our book, The Green Stone, the book that I wrote with a colleague called Martin Keepman. Andrew Collins, who you mentioned earlier, who was giving a talk over the weekend at you say it for me.
Megalithomania.
Yeah, that. He was involved in research too, and he did his own book called The Seventh Sword, which spoke about all this. It got so much interest that the house that was just, the gardens that were crumbling away were taken over by the National Trust and restored to their original glory.
Wow.
So if it wasn't for that book that you just showed, plus Andy's book as well, the place would have been a complete mess.
And they are fantastic gardens now.
Into that. Say?
They are fantastic gardens now as well. It looks beautiful when, I've seen your recent videos of the place, and I've been there myself, of course, years ago. And it is, it's a very beautiful garden now.
Yeah, but what's so amazing is there's so much more to find out. The question was, what had happened to Mary Heath herself, the person who had inspired all these gardens, and the person who had had this secret society going there? It was said by some of the people we'd interviewed, like Andy Collins received a letter from an old lady who, this is going back to the 1980s, who used to work in the place as a maid when she was a teenager. And she said that somewhere there was this underground passageway, series of underground passageways and a cellar and a strange room where they used to conduct their rituals. And it isn't until now, literally in the last couple of weeks, that we've been able to find out where this is, because there's been a certain amount of ground sensing radar done there to find that there's this weird room within a room within a room in a labyrinth of passageways right underneath the house that nobody knew what was there. And according to the scans, the ground sensing radar scans, it seems there's still stuff in there, artifacts left behind by this secret society when they ceased to exist in the late 1890s.
Wow. Graham, are you going to get in there?
Hopefully. At the moment, we've been told that because there's so much asbestos and that around, the whole place has got to be really thoroughly checked out by health and safety people before any kind of work can begin to open these rooms up. And that could take some time. But it's quite fascinating. Goodness only knows what'll be in there.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, Graham, what do you expect to see in there? What kind of things would you be looking for?
Well, at the end of the 19th century, the craze of occultism and Ouija boards and spiritualism all sort of like reached a height in the Gothic revival. And this particular group seems to have been the most influential of all, because when they disbanded in the late 1890s, other groups split off from them, like the Golden Dawn, of which the famous Aleister Crowley was part, the Stella Matutina, of which Dion Fortune of Glastonbury fame was part of. All modern occultism and witchcraft and everything else seems to have stemmed from this group that met at Biddulph Grange. They included, for example, A.E. Waite, the man who did the famous Rider-Waite tarot pack, upon which many tarot packs today are based, the poet W.B. Yeats, and many others. And what these people really got up to, what inspired them, what their intentions were of doing these strange, mysterious rituals, who knows? But the answer may lie within this secret. I mean, why build a room within a room within a room? It could have all sorts of occult symbols on the wall. It could have artifacts in there. Who knows? I'm just dying.
Jumping at the bit, I would imagine.
Graham, I've got to say, firstly, thank you for your work on Biddulph Grange. I had a fantastic date there when I took a girl to it, and she loved the garden. So I've really got to say thanks for doing that.
Oh yeah, you earned him some points there.
You earned me some points there. If I'd have dropped that little nugget in there as well, the fact that I know the guy that was responsible, it might have gone even better.
Responsible for the gardens here.
But it didn't. But Graham, what were these guys up to? What were they build? Why did they build a room within a room within a room within a room? How far did they go? Because you mentioned, of course, was it C.S. Lewis and Through the Looking Glass, the story of Alice in Wonderland as well? Carroll, sorry.
Lewis Carroll.
Carroll.
Yeah, I get those two mixed up. Yeah, Lewis Carroll, who wrote Alice Through the Looking Glass. Many people have thought that because he was a mathematician at Oxford University, an Oxford Don, and all his other books about mathematics and physics and stuff that he was writing in the late 1800s. Then he suddenly wrote these two children's books, Alice Through the Looking Glass and Alice in Wonderland. And many people think they're full of some kind of occult or mystical symbolism or even mathematical. For example, in Alice Through the Looking Glass, Alice travels around a chessboard, and the moves she makes on the chessboard are kind of, huge, great landscape marked out like a chessboard, and the move she makes means something in some mathematical formula or whatever. I don't understand all that, but everybody thinks that the Alice upon whom he based the story of the little girl was a girl called Alice Liddell, who was the daughter of a colleague of his from Oxford University. But their ages are wrong. There are photographs of Alice Liddell, and she's got brown hair, not the blonde hair, which Lewis Carroll describes the girl in the book and in the illustrations that were made for the book originally. Alice Liddell, when he wrote the book, would have been 12, whereby Alice says herself in the book that she's 7.5. So usually in the films you see an older Alice. It's probably because they're getting older girls to play the part, getting a little girl set 7.5 to play quite a complicated part like Alice is in the stories, maybe a bit much for for the TV or movies. But the fact is that it's a lot. Cutting a long story short, Mary Heath of Biddulph Grange is of exactly the right age to have been the Alice. To have been the Alice in the Alice in Wonderland stories, to have been based on that. And she was blonde-haired. She was born in 1844, which put her at the right age when Carroll wrote these books. And this is at the same time that he was actually spending time at Biddulph Grange. He was not the only person to have gone up there. It became a kind of magnet, if you like, or a meeting place of artists. The whole lot of pre-Raphaelite artists started meeting there too, including Burne-Jones and Rossetti. And it attracted lots of different... I mean, you've got W.B. Yeats, who became massively involved in the occult, was one of England's greatest poets. You've got actresses too, like the actress Florence Farr got involved in these groups. So they were all meeting at Biddulph Grange. And I think that it's just possible, and that's what I'm working on at the moment, that the original Alice in Wonderland story was based on this garden at Biddulph Grange.
So do you think like maybe Mary Heath had some sort of occult experience when she was young then, maybe?
Well, already the idea of a child suddenly being thought of as something special has got a precedent in occult tradition. For example, there's a man who was very influential through the 20th century philosopher called Krishnamurti. And he, as a child, was brought up by the Theosophical Society, Madame Blavatsky and Annie Besant and all that lot, if anybody knows anything about them, in the 1800s. Well, Krishnamurti was like chosen as a child, that they said that he's got this great gift, that he's psychic, and when he grows up, he's going to be able to come up with all these amazing and do all these amazing things. And of course, when he grew up, he broke away from the Theosophical Society and became a philosopher and said they wanted nothing more to do with it. So it had already happened once. But Mary Heath seems to have been the order of Meoniah, who was meeting at Biddulph Grange and with all these pre-Raphaelite painters. She, as a child, was obviously considered to be their kind of like spirit medium or something like this. And I think from what we've gathered from the bits and pieces that we have been able to put together is that they were trying to create in their temple, their Egyptian temple and so forth at Biddulph, they were trying to create a doorway to a parallel world. It was at the end of the 1800s that the physicists first began to think of other dimensions and parallel universes, which is what's inspired people like Lewis Carroll to write the kind of books he did anyway. And it seems that the kind of magic, if you like, or the occult sort of ceremonies that they were performing at Biddulph Grange, that the idea was for them to open a portal to another universe. And I think that's what this room within a room within a room is supposed to be. It's basically a three-dimensional creation of a tesseract, which is, if anybody who's seen the film Interstellar, that's what he goes into at the end.
Wow.
For those that don't know, what's a tesseract, Graham?
A tesseract
for
is
me,
a
what's a tesseract?
Yeah, like us.
So it's some sort of mathematical.
If you imagine a square is a two-dimensional version of a cube,
yes,
a tesseract is a four-dimensional version of a cube.
Okay, there's a cube of another dimension.
It's basically what people like Picasso and the artists of the Cubist movement were trying to draw in four dimensions. The universe is made up of three dimensions. You've got length, breadth, and height. And you've also got time. So that's like a fourth dimension. What they started to believe around the beginning of the 20th century, with the birth of quantum physics and the time of Einstein's theories, is that there might be higher dimensions and extra dimensions, like a fifth dimension. Try and imagine another spatial dimension other than three. Where is it? Probably in your head, who knows? But the idea was that this is like, even that is just a gap between our universe and another one. And most physicists today believe that there are possibly an infinite amount of other universes out there, just like you get in movies where people go.
Isn't that what Stephen Hawking was working on just before he died as well?
Yeah, absolutely, he believes in them. But these ideas, although the physics behind them wasn't proven until more recently, that the physics behind them was already being theoretically worked out at the time that these occultists were doing their stuff. So you've got people who are used to magic and mysticism, adding a bit of scientific knowledge to it too, and saying, maybe we can get to some universe where there's fairies or whatever.
Graham, why were these guys so fascinated with this? Why were they all looking into? Why were the Victorians so crazy about the occult, about other dimensions? And how far did some of these guys go? Did they achieve their goals, perhaps? Well,
it was a time known as the Gothic Revival. The early Victorian period had been very, Puritan. Women weren't even allowed to show their ankles, and you even had to put little skirts around the legs of tables because seeing a leg of a table could make you think of women's legs. That's how prudish the Victorians were. It was just a kind of craze they were all going through. And this was a reaction against this by the young to create a new movement, which is known as the Neo-Gothic movement. Everybody started to think in terms of in olden times, you used to have King Arthur and Robin Hood and maidens in distress and all this. So that's why you've got all these pre-Raphaelite paintings representing all these ancient myths and legends and so on. You also got writers starting to come up with stories like Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, and you've got Dracula by Bram Stoker. All these became really popular. There was a general popularity of mystical, weird things of the past that flooded Britain first, and then spread out to America and elsewhere in Europe. And it was part of the architecture. You'll very often you might visit a stately home and think, oh, that looks like it's medieval. No, it was only built in the 1800s. Stafford Castle, for example, is one such example. It looks like a medieval ruin. It isn't. That castle was built in the late 1800s by the Earl of Stafford to make it look like an ancient castle.
Based on a Norman castle, wasn't it?
Say
So
again?
I think it was bought in the 1800s, and then it was based on a Norman castle from the 1200s, something like that.
Totally. They were rebuilding Norman castles. The only thing is, when the stone from the outside comes off, you find concrete inside it.
You can see the
So it was
brickwork at
part of
Stafford
an
Castle.
overall sudden interest in things of the past. And in America, two sisters came up with the idea of Ouija boards and table tapping. The Fox sisters and the invention of the Ouija board came. That literally caught Victorians totally, but it became such a craze. I can't think of anything equivalent. I mean, like now, everyone spends all their time online surfing the internet or playing World of Warcraft. The Victorian parlour game that everyone was playing was seances and Ouija boards. But then again, imagine you're sitting at home. You've got some gas lights going. There's no TV, no radio. You're fed up of reading the same old books over and over.
Might as well open a portal to another dimension.
Oh,
brilliant!
Great idea, Chris.
So basically, what these really rich people were doing at Biddulph Grange, and they were the new rich. The Batemans and the Heaths had made all their money on coal mining and doing all the pottery stuff in Stoke-on-Trent. They were the new rich. They thought, let's take seances to a new level and not just speak to people in the dead or from another dimension. Let's try and go there. And we've got plenty of money to build all this stuff to do it with.
Yeah, exactly. We can do it. And they probably had the access to the historical knowledge as well, with the Egyptian discoveries and things like that.
I was about to say that, Chris.
I wanted to come back to this idea of the name, just because it's something striking me, that the name Meon, near to here, down south of the country, there is a Meon Valley. I just wondered, is there any significance in the name?
Meon, in that respect, as in the Meon Valley down in Portsmouth area, in Hampshire, I think it is, and there's also a Meon Hill in Warwickshire, comes after the name of a flower called the Meon. Meonia, it's a rare blue flower that looks like a sort of snowdroppy type thing, I think. That's what I found out. But the actual word Meonia, or pronounced Meonia, Meonia, Andrew Collins did a lot of research and found out it was the name of a part of what's now Turkey, which was once part of the Greek world, sort of near the area where Troy was. And it's a place where it's basically was thought in Greek legend to be the place where magic was born.
Okay. Wow.
It's today it's kind of near where, I'm not exactly sure, I'm no expert on geography, but if you've ever gone to the ruins of Ephesus in Turkey, the Roman Ephesus.
Sort of eastern Turkey, that
it's
region.
kind of that area-ish.
Hey, Graham, what's the octagonal rooms at Shugborough Hall based on? Is that somewhere in Greece, if I remember correctly? Is it?
No idea.
I can't remember what
I'm
the
no
place is
expert on
called.
Shugborough. People always ask me about Shugborough because of certain Grail connections, but I'm really no expert on Shugborough Hall at all. You need to get Andrew Baker on this program.
Yes, right, Chris, get the pen
You
out.
could get him on.
All
Seriously,
right, Andrew
he knows
Baker.
everything about it. I think he's been researching it for years and years. And I know if I tried to say anything about Shugborough on this, he'd say, "No, Graham, you're wrong about that."
The reason I
I'll
asked.
ask you one about Biddulph.
Jump in, Chris.
I do. I've got one about Biddulph. Sorry, Gunnar, to cut you off. But I noticed on one of your videos you had this, and you'll like this, Gunnar. There's an ancient Celtic spring there linked to some sort of cave. Is that correct, or is that near Biddulph?
That's just near Biddulph. There's near Biddulph, there is it's just about a mile to the north. There is now an ancient tomb known as Bridestones. Now, it's a prehistoric tomb. If you go on
Wikipedia, isn't it? Anything with bride or Brigitte is to do with
Bride is the Saxon name, the Saxon version of the name Brigitte, which was a goddess of the Celts that were here before the Romans, also known as Bridget in Ireland, who became Saint Bridget under a Christianized version of the name. But the Brigantes, the tribe that ruled the north of England, get their name from Brigitte or Bridget or Brigga, many versions of it. Now, These stones, the bride stones or Brigitte stones, which are just north of Biddulph Grange, are it's a burial chamber, similar to those you will get down the south of England, such as Wayland Smithy. Now, they date back about 4,500 years. In fact, earlier than that, 5,500 years. But the particular burial chamber called the Bridestones is around 2,000 years old. Even though forget what it says on Wikipedia, it's not an ancient burial barrow. It is in fact what they call a box tomb, and these were built by the Celts just before the Romans arrived. The reason it looks like a much earlier megalithic long barrow is the two great big stones stand in front of it like portal stones. They were only put there in the 1930s by some archaeologists from Manchester University who'd found them fallen nearby and thought they ought to be there and make it so it's made it look like the wrong kind of tomb. But what is fascinating is that this tomb was built next to a much older stone circle, of which those two stones that now stand at the entrance upright were part of it, stones over 15 feet high, possibly as many as 20 of them in a circle, a big stone circle, possibly dating back 4,000 or 5,000 years, stood right next to it, was still there in the 1700s, as I've found in an old book, which has a plan of it and description. But our good friend James Bateman, the first person to start building the gardens at Biddulph Grange, who owned that land in the late 1800s, he basically had them knocked over, dragged away, and re-erected in the grounds of Biddulph Grange. And there, so basically a stone circle was moved and re-erected, and it's been wrongly put back together now to look like a kind of Celtic tomb in the middle of Biddulph Gardens in Biddulph Grange. So that's where the stone circle ended up. All that's actually left of that original stone circle is a spring that stood in the middle, and the gap to get into it, a natural spring, a natural little where water comes bubbling out the ground. It comes from under a tree, and if you are brave enough and clamber inside it, you'll find yourself in a cavern that seems to have been had artificial constructions put in it at some time in the past, perhaps Roman times, to turn it into some kind of ritual basin with water dripping into it. So that is fantastic.
What's the
and I think
significance
that's where the
of
Alice
that?
in Wonderland going into the hole in the ground, follows the White Rabbit, started with that place originally.
I was just going to ask you, what's the significance of that then? So why did Celtic peoples like to have water shrines? Was that to give offerings to the goddess or to the local god or water deities?
Yes, basically. You've got the stone circles are originally built by people earlier than the Celts. For example, a group known as the Beaker people that originally came from what's now the Netherlands. The Celts that came from Germany later on brought the Iron Age with them. They really liked the idea of, they went so much into stone circles. What they were into is natural springs that they believe the life-giving water came from the underworld in which the gods lived. And pools and rivers and streams became particularly sacred to the Celts. In fact, archaeology has discovered many dried up pools where people used to throw in their sacred and most precious belongings as offerings, usually to a water goddess in the north of England, Brigitte. And the story in King Arthur, for example, of his sword being thrown into a lake and the Lady of the Lake grabbing the sword and taking it down to the crystal depths, that is based on Celtic legends of a warrior's sword being cast into a lake as an offering to a water goddess as part of his funeral or her funeral, because the Celts had as many warrior women as they had men.
Equal opportunities.
And in fact, it's survived to this day in the idea of wishing wells, where people throw coins into a well in the hope of having their dreams come true. And so what the Celts used to do is, if they found a stone circle, if there wasn't a natural spring, they thought, well, these stone circles were built by people here before us, perhaps some kind of godly race. Well, we also want a spring here, and if possible, they would dig a well in the middle of or nearby the stone circles, so that they could incorporate the old gods and the new ones, the gods of the air from the stone circles, and the gods of the underworld through these underground caves with rivers in them.
So were they using it as a ritual space? Was water part of the ritual?
Water.
I know where you're going, Chris.
The Celts, basically, they had rituals of earth, air, fire, and water. The years divided into four. The four most important periods were the middle of winter, the shortest day, the midwinter solstice, the midsummer solstice, which is on June the 21st, and then the in-between days, which are called the equinoxes, when day and night are of equal length, March 21st and September 21st. Each one was an earth, air, or fire, or water festival. And so they had to have something at their sacred sites representing each of these things. And their goddess of the water was Brigida. Their goddess of the air would be perhaps Epona, a kind of flying horse thing, and so on.
And sometimes were the water gods always female, or were there occasionally male spirits associated?
Generally speaking, they were female, as far as I can work out, as far as the Celts were concerned. But most of the important gods for the Celts tended to be female. In fact, from what we know about what the Roman writings tell us, the people who seem to have been the most revered of the Druids lived in, the priesthood of the Celts, lived in isolation from the rest of the society on sacred islands in lakes, and these were usually women. Roman writers refer to groups of 9 women or 9 maidens living alone and with celibacy on an island and acting as oracles. They were also the ones who blessed the weapons that were made by the swordsmiths, so that they would have magical power when they went into battle. And it comes back to the stories of King Arthur, which were based on these sort of legends. And when Arthur himself, when he dies, he's taken across a lake to an island in the middle called Avalon, where he's laid to rest. And there are 9 Grail maidens who tend to his body. It is one of these, called the Lady of the Lake, who we know is the one that grabs the sword at the end of the story, who actually forges the magical sword Excalibur in the first place. So women as goddesses and in important positions in society was the norm for the Celts, until the Romans turned up with their misogynistic ways.
Well, see, we've got a little mystery in Rugeley in Staffordshire on a similar vein, but we're chasing the spirit of the 7 Springs, as it was known, and he was known as Old Man Cannock, and he was known as the spirit of the 7 Streams. So along with what you were saying, it'd probably be unlikely that he was Celtic.
What you're talking about there, I think, seems very much more to have been a Viking. You've got Gunnar was talking earlier about the possibility that the name comes from Canute, who was a Viking king of England. Now, this is much later. The Celts are there until the mid-1st century, when the Romans came. The Romans left, leaving the Celts here again on their own. The Celts were then invaded by the Anglo-Saxons by the 700-800s, and then for a while, many parts of England, including the whole of it for a while, were ruled by the Vikings that come from Denmark, and one of their kings, Canute, ruled the whole of England. And that's around the 900 period, AD, ish. That's, I think, the period you're looking for there. I think you're looking at Viking stuff.
This location that we're talking about, Graham, is quite interesting. It's within Rugeley itself, isn't it, Chris?
It is.
And you just mentioned it just there as well. It's actually, they've kind of constructed the 7 streams almost to create a lake. Inside that lake is an island, and inside that island is what appears to be a grotto, a hellfire club, perhaps even. And then, like it says, Chris was saying, Old Man Cank kind of sits on a bridge overlooking that. Now, from the research I was doing, as you just alluded to there, Graham, is that Cank Wood actually relates to Canute, or is supposed to relate to Canute. Obviously, he came through this area around 1013. I think he was King of England, also King of Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, I think, all at the same time. Kind of lost it, won it back again 3 years later. And then afterwards, I mean, he was the first person really to unite the United Kingdom in that respect. But then I think his heirs and himself passed away by 1030. And then, of course, by 1066, we've got the Norman invasion, and then everything changes again. But I began to wonder about this. And I thought, we've got the Battle of Tettenhall in 910 AD, which nobody really knows where it took place. We've got Castle Ring on the edge of Cank Wood or Cannock Wood, which many people believe, obviously, and yourself, Graham, probably talk about this, is thousands of years old. But I was wondering when maybe this idea that this might have been repurposed during these times of Canute. Did he indeed fortify this, or did the locals fortify this and use it as a place to strike out and actually turn the tide in some of these battles?
Good point, especially if you take in the idea that previously worship of water deities was a big thing, usually female, as you said, Graham. But is it possible that they just repurposed it, just changed the name?
Yeah, it keeps happening over and over again. I mean, we're talking then about Castle Ring, which was a fortification built originally by the Celts before the Romans turned up. So let's say 200 BC, 2,200 years ago. It's a series of ditches and embankments built in rings, upon the top of which would have been wooden stockades. The Romans then turned up, and these places were abandoned. When the Romans left and society collapsed around the mid-400s, these places were reused by the post-Romans, the Celts that were here at that time. Then, after they were defeated by the Anglo-Saxons remodified them, and then when the Anglo-Saxons in parts of the country were defeated by the Vikings, then they did the same thing. And then when the Normans finally took the country from France in 1066, they started using what had been used by the Vikings. So you've got many periods of occupation. So, and along with that would have become they would have brought in their new gods to replace the old ones.
Right, Graham.
Gods that had a similar kind of role. For example, many springs devoted to Brigitte in the north and the Midlands of England, the Romans rechristened them to the goddess Minerva, the goddess of water and springs. And then you've got the Christians coming along after the collapse of towards the end of the Roman Empire, that rededicated them to saints such as Saint Bridget or even the Virgin Mary.
Graham, that's a great place to hold you. We've run out of time for the first hour, buddy, but we'll stop here and we'll come back in a few seconds, all right?
Asylum.
Welcome back then, you listen to the Asylum. It's me, Gunnar, in a chair of doom, joined by CK. Easy, buddy, how's it going?
Hello, how are we doing? That was
I'm all right, my friend.
First hour. I've really enjoyed that.
Wasn't it just? Graham Phillips just piping up there, getting into the local mysteries of Cannock Chase in Staffordshire. And also, good evening, Graham Phillips.
Good evening. I don't know what piping means, but I'm happy to pipe.
Your passionate discourse around the mysteries of Staffordshire and Cannock Chase. Dude, you were just talking to us about Castle Ring and about some of the strange mysteries surrounding that. What do you know about Castle Ring? I mean, who originally owned this fortification? What was it for? What legends surround it, Graham?
Well, it's on the edge of Cannock Chase, just by a little village called Cannock Wood. It's in Cannock Chase, for those who don't know, is actually a forest. So it's in the middle of a forest. It wouldn't have been in the middle of a forest when it was originally built. It would have been on open land. It's on top of a hill.
It was actually heathland, wasn't it?
It was basically a hill fort. It was a series of ditches and embankments which were fortified by wooden stockades probably by the Celtic Brigante tribe in the north of England, or possibly the Cornovi tribe, who were south of them, to defend against whichever side it was built to defend against, of either Cornovi or Brigantes, which are different tribes of Celts. Then it was used as a defense against the Romans and managed to hold out against the Romans for perhaps about 20 years.
Wow.
Until the Romans eventually took over the whole of Britain. And then after that, no one knows quite what happened to it, because it probably was used by the Anglo-Saxons and the Vikings and others, as I've said. But the thing is, there's never been any proper archaeological work done there.
Yes. This is why I'm hitting a dead end.
I have found out something, that as it was a Celtic fort originally, it was a fort, and inside that fort would have been a town. It wouldn't have been a military barracks. It would have been a fortified settlement of the Celtic people. And they lived in round stone and wooden huts, buildings really, not stone structures that you'd have got in the Roman times later. Remember I said to them what was really important was having underground stream, where underground streams bubble to the surface through a cave system, and they became holy wells, if you like, to the Celtic people, associated with various goddesses. In this part of the country, this goddess Brigitte, or Bridget as she's sometimes known. And just outside Castlereagh, at a place called there's a little village called Cannock Wood, and there's another little wood, and there's a well there called the Nuns' Well.
Yes.
It was made into a holy well in Christian times, in medieval times, where people believe that they could be cured by drinking the waters. But it's the way it is now. You've got a big tree and a hole under the tree that leads to where the water comes out of the ground into a stone-built basin. And that seems to have been used by the Celts a couple of thousand years ago as a place of worship, and was believed to be a portal to the world of the spirits and the gods. Now, sacred probably to the goddess Bridget.
I find Castlereagh absolutely fascinating, Graham, and I know that there's more to this story than we actually know at the moment. One of the things I was looking at, of course, right the way through that Viking invasion from like the 700s all the way through to 1000 AD, we were right on the front line. This was literally, Mercia was literally, the trenches, wasn't it? And it was constantly changing backwards and forwards. Now, as you mentioned there before with about Castlereagh, it was originally heathland that surrounded it. So you would have seen for miles, you'd have seen all the way over to Calthome Ceremonial Complex. You'd have seen all the way over to towards Tamworth and the River Tame. As we spoke about before, Chris, as well. You'd have also seen right the way down towards Walsall and towards Wolverhampton, Woden'sfield or Wensfield, where the Battle of Tettenhall is supposed to be. So I think this place probably had quite an important role. But as you said, Graham, there really hasn't been any archaeology done on it. I mean, they kind of said, yes, it's a couple of thousand years old. And also they believe there was a medieval hunting lodge there from like the 1200s. But what is weird, and like I say, it kind of borders Cannock Wood or Canute's Wood, and just down the road, Chris, I bet you didn't know this, is Alfred's Wood as well, or King Alfred the Great, if you will, or the first. What was he? The first King of England, original King of England, or something, or close to?
I think he was the son of the first king, wasn't he?
I think he was
uncle of the first king.
Uncle
of the first. Wasn't the first guy? What was his name? Now it was like somebody Ironside or something. Was that who it was?
Is it the guy in the wheelchair?
Athelstan, his nephew, I think, was the first king of all England.
Yeah, wasn't he the king of Wessex?
It was Alfred that made it possible. But what's really fascinating is, until the period when England became united as one country, it was divided in Saxon times into a number of separate kingdoms, of which this area in the Midlands of England was known as Middle Angles, where the word Midlands comes from. It was never
That's
Middle
so
Lands.
Cool. I didn't know that.
Or it was also known as Mercia.
Yeah.
And Alfred was the king of Wessex, which was down the southwest of England, and he took over most of the country. But each individual area, although he kind of was the first king of England, but he wasn't officially. He was the kind of high king over all these other kingdoms. And Mercia he married his daughter, Ethelfleda, after the King of Mercia, who was then given the title Ealdorman or Earl of Mercia, a kind of lesser king, who was subject to Alfred down in Winchester in the south of England, where he had his headquarters. But then husband of Ethelfleda died, and Ethelfleda became a warrior queen of the Anglo-Saxons. Her capital was at Tamworth, and she became known as the Lady of the Mercians. She was, in effect, the Queen of the Mercians, although not by name. She was she was princess, if you like. She was a warrior princess, and she was the one who really eventually, although the fight against the Anglo-Saxons had really been accomplished, the fight by the Anglo-Saxons against the Vikings had really been accomplished by her father. She was the one who really put the final nail in the coffin for the Vikings. What she did was she came to a place and she said she had a staff and she put it into the ground at the ford of this crossing of a river and said, the Vikings will no longer, will go no further than this. This is as far as they go. And this place where she put her staff into the ford is today known as Stafford. And she built the first Stafford castle. And the place where the staff went into the ford is traditionally supposed to be somewhere near Casa nightclub now.
Is it? Because I mentioned this to you before. We were on the hunt for this old Iron Age trackway that kind of must have linked these places together. I mean, I'm just looking at a statue of Queen Ethelfleda, or Lady of the Mercians. I think she was more commonly known as, wasn't she? But as you said there, Graham, this woman is hugely unremembered in British history, but is absolutely pivotal. She fortified the burhs, or basically made defensive fortifications around Stafford. She also did the same in Tamworth, I believe it was. She won back Derby from the Vikings. She pushed them all the way, right the way back up to the Mersey, which I believe, and I don't know what you think about this, but it's almost like Mercia to the sea. Mersey, maybe. I don't know if that's the etymology of the name. Yeah, because what she actually did was she forced them all the way back up to basically sort of like Liverpool area, and then gave them some land on the other side, didn't she? Of the Mersey, of the River Mersey. And she said, basically, you can have that, and that'll act as a buffer. That lasted about a year before they basically invaded. But after her death, she was largely written from history, wasn't she, Graham? And I think, if I'm correct, she actually brought up the prince that went on to become basically the first king of England. Is that correct, I think? And he's actually,
yes,
I can see him in the statue.
Athelstan, who became the first one to really unite all of these kingdoms into one kingdom of England. I don't think it was her son, but it was
a nephew, wasn't it? Wasn't it a nephew who was sent to live with her?
Maybe? I don't know. I'm no real expert on the Anglo-Saxons. It's more the Celts that I'm my period. But she was the one who was his mentor.
Fascinating story. But you know, like you were saying, Graham, it's already built on this Celtic landscape that's been around for a long time, and also maybe some pre-Celtic with the stone circles. So do you believe that the stone circles weren't built by the Celts?
There was so many people built them. If the history of the British Isles is basically this. Until 10,000 BC, most of Britain was covered by the Ice Age. Nobody was living there at all. When the ice retreated, Britain wasn't an island. It was still joined to Europe by a land bridge. People came over from there that we know as the Neolithic people. They were basically Stone Age people who built some early stone structures like tombs, such as the tomb of Wayland Smithy, which is down near in Oxfordshire, and a place called the Cannock Long Barrow, which is near Avebury in Wiltshire. They built the first stone structures, if you like, but they were basically called long barrows. They were then covered by earth, and they were graves, if you like, tombs. Then there came another lot of people, or perhaps it was the same lot who decided to do it based on some new sort of ideas that they came up with themselves around 3000 BC. and started building the first stone circles. Now, the first of those were built up in the Orkney Isles, the north of Scotland, and it came down from there, across into Ireland, and Stonehenge was built within about 100 years of the first stone circle being built on the Orkney Isles of Scotland. So you've got Stonehenge and other stone circles starting to be built by these early inhabitants known as the Neolithic people. Around 1,000 years after that, you've then got another group, 500 years after that, you've got another group of people known as the Beaker people, called that because in their graves they would bury their dead with a pottery beaker or ceremonial cup of some kind. And they came across from what is now the Netherlands. There was still a bit of a land bridge because it wasn't, you know, the sea levels were still rising after the Ice Age. They also took on the stone circles. They built the most, originally at Stonehenge, you've got a simple stone circle. The Beaker people got into the stone circle tradition and started to build some even more impressive things like the Stonehenge we now know and love with the lintel stones along the top. And it went on from there. Lots of people inherited these stone circles and started using them, including the Celts who first arrived about 700 BC and brought the Iron Age with them. Rather than being Stone Age people, they brought iron, which was better than the people before them, the Beaker people, who'd had bronze. That was better than the people before them, the Neolithic people, who'd had stone implements.
Graham, I wanted to ask you, how do you think Castle Ring plays a role in the paranormal nature of Cannock Chase? You mentioned before about the stream and stuff like this. Now, what actually comes out of Castle Ring is the Red Brook, and the Red Brook runs all the way down into the valley and basically down towards Rugeley. It actually runs directly underneath my house, as you know, Chris. I live on Red Brook Lane, of course. How does this huge iron seam that runs underneath there and this flowing water and this sort of crystalline sandstone rock have an effect on the paranormal nature of Cannock Chase, if indeed it does at all? Of course, Castle Ring itself is actually, and you saw his talk on Sunday, Chris, Gary Biltcliffe, it's actually a male and female node point at the Bolinas ley line, which is Britain's longest ley line as well. Is that in any way connected? And is that one of the reasons, in fact, I'll ask that question later, I'll let you answer the first one.
Well, I really, what causes paranormal things? I don't know. First of all, strange lights have been documented as appearing in places by scientific surveys. There's a place called the Burton Dasset Hills in Warwickshire, where on many occasions strange lights have been seen moving around on the hills. It appears that these are some form of, some people have done research that suggests that they are caused by the kind of rocks that exist there, creating some sort of plasma or ball lightning type of phenomena. And that can be caused by the kind of rocks that are in an area. Now, obviously, that's nothing I've personally done a great deal of research into, but people have seen these strange lights in the area around Castle Ring in Cannock Chase. They could account for people saying, oh, I've seen a UFO or a ghost or white lady or whatever. Some sort of natural phenomenon we don't know too much about yet, some electrostatic ball lightning kind of thing. That's about the best I can describe it in a non-scientific way. But what I find fascinating, and I can't account for it, is the sheer amount. If the most haunted house in England was said to be Borley Rectory down in Essex, which the famous ghost hunter Harry Price investigated in the 1930s. Another most haunted building in England is said to be Ettington Park in Warwickshire. It's where they set the film The Haunting, the famous film that was made in the 1960s. The most haunted place in England, in my opinion, has got to be in and around Cannock Chase. If you describe the kind of things that are seen as hauntings, there are, around that area, you get white ladies seen, where you get white ladies seen all over the place, a floating white lady. Maybe it's one of these balls of light that people say, oh, it's a woman dressed in white and glowing. But you also get people claiming to see strange phantom big cats like pumas. You get them seeing Sasquatch-like ape creatures. You've got this dark-eyed girl, like a Japanese ghost girl, like you thought get crawling out the television in you get those things crawling out the television in The Ring. You've got those appearing there now. You've got pig men, flying men, anacondas, all sorts of strange things people claiming to see. Now, I've heard people say, oh, yeah, well, that Japanese ghost girl was made up by somebody, and, oh, yeah, they're just making this up to test people out. Well, if they are, it's a phenomenon, a mental phenomenon worth investigating, because the people of Cannock Chase seem to be more susceptible to seeing or believing in these things than anywhere else in Britain. In fact,
Absolutely.
I don't know if anywhere else in the world that's got such a collection of weird and wonderful creatures and monsters all in one place, and it seems to be centered upon the area around Castle Ring.
Now, this
Absolutely.
is what I find.
Gunnar, it's just near you, Gunnar. The
Dude,
Black Dog, just at the top of your street.
I have actually been researching this today. In 1972, a gentleman, Nigel Lee, whilst driving down from the area of Castle Ring towards Rugeley, so he's coming past the old Burton Colliery, Chris, which is at the top of my street, of course. He then comes into the street which is next door to me, Colpit Lane, and whilst he's on his way past Burton Colliery, he saw a light in the sky which fell onto the old Freeman's Farm, Chris, which is behind Castle Ring. He then drives down, behind Colpit Lane. He then drives down Colpit Lane, has a look over to Freeman's Farm to see where this light fell in the field. And what he actually notices standing in front of him is, quote, the biggest bloody dog I ever saw. Now, that's just one of the stories, glowing red eyes. That's just one of the stories. In 1985, in the very same street, a woman saw a dog basically about 7 feet tall rear up on its hind legs and run off into the bushes. We've got countless stories of big dogs like this right around this area, Chris. We've got, I myself, as you know, through the Asylum, have picked up a Bigfoot type or Sasquatch type story from there as well. I've even done some investigating up near Castle Ring into this sort of stuff. I mean, one of the things I was looking into today, Lionel Thanthorpe actually did a survey, I believe again around 1975, and he said that basically out of 22, in the last 30 years, out of 22 werewolf type kind of sightings, 21 of them happened on Cannock Chase. Get that? That's bonkers. In 1975 in Eccleshall, a young man actually phoned his friend and said, I'm turning into a wolf. He basically, the legend goes, or the story goes, that he actually made a pact with the devil whilst using a Ouija board, and basically that he would be able to be turned into a wolf or something like this. And when he actually began to turn into a wolf, he called his friend. He was then found by the crossroads and stabbed himself with a silver knife. Mental health issues? Or maybe something much deeper. As you know, Chris, the legend of the story, the what was it now? The monkey, the man monkey of Bridge 39, which was who am I thinking
Wasn't that
about?
you, Gunnar?
It may have been me. It may have been known to be me late at night. Who wrote the book about it?
Is the Bridge 39, is that been on number 39 on a canal?
Yes, that's Nick Redfern wrote it. Bridge 39.
Yeah.
We've also got Shugborough, or the Shug Barrow. I've had myself,
And
Chris.
Shug is another big black dog, isn't it?
Shug is another big black dog. Why does this area, Graham, have so many of these stories? Like you said, you know, are the people of the area more susceptible to these type of things? Is it something to do with the geology and the landscape? Is it something to do with these Victorian types that we were investigating and talking about before? Did they kind of open up portals? Or, I mean, what's your theory, dude? What do you think?
I think there's something special about the centre of England. I mean, I've investigated so many things that all end up back here. The Staff of Moses ends up in Birmingham Museum. How does that happen? I investigate King Arthur, thinking that he probably comes from the southwest of England, finding out that he comes from the most likely historical place that he comes from, based on the earliest legends, is the Roman city of Viraconium, which is right next to Shrewsbury, again in the Midlands. You've got Robin Hood anyway, he's based in Nottingham, but more fascinating than that, the original story of him seems to originate in the area of Abbots Bromley, that still performs this Robin Hood pageant every year and has been doing for hundreds of years in September with the horned men. The
horn dance.
The horn dance. And so you've got loads of things that keep coming back to the centre of England. the centre of England is described by a number of various mystical writers around the year 1600 who started a secret society called the Rosicrucians, calling it the heart of the rose being England and the heart of the centre of England. To them was considered to be really important. I don't know. I have what there's nothing special about the rocks here that are different to everywhere else. Maybe it's because
I wonder. What we were just talking about. I remember I mentioned the Gary Biddulph talk at the weekend.
Yes.
One of the really interesting parts that he was talking about was this idea of sacred cosmology. So 4 sites built around a central site, and with the central site being the most important site. And in England, he cited this area of England, the Mercian Kingdom, as that region. And Gary Biddulph was under the impression that geomancers, when they founded the city, would find the centre first and then build out. And then they would build ceremonial complexes in that area.
Do you know, Chris,
and
that's
I
weird.
wonder if maybe that's what this part of Britain is that it is the sacred central region of the area. And as such, that's probably why we've got more an increase in sites, an increase in stories, and an increase in, shall we say, occultism or strange practices as well.
Do you think then, guys, Graham, do you think, and I'll ask you this as well, Chris, do you think then that these guys in Victorian times picked up this kind of ancient history in the landscape and then started to work with it, or trying to open up more doorways, perhaps, Graham?
They definitely did at Biddulph Grange, because they took a whole stone circle and reassembled it in their garden. There's also something I've just found out recently, and was actually only found out at the Megalithomania conference that you went to this weekend. Some friends of mine who were there got in touch and said, do you realise that there's a place called the White Leaf Oak, which was the centre of Druid activity in the past, which is in a place called near Ledbury in Herefordshire, and that a cutting from that tree was taken, and a new white leaf oak, which is a rare kind of oak tree, was grown in the middle of Biddulph Grange by the people in the 1800s. Now the original white leaf oak, as far as I can gather, has been chopped down or something by Puritans or whatever. But the thing is that what they were doing is, certainly the people who were at Biddulph Grange in the late 1800s were trying to grab things from different periods of the past and put them all together and recreate the magic of lots of past civilizations, Druids, megalithic people, Egyptians. They've even got a Chinese garden there, and do some kind of occultism. They kind of were trying to. They certainly believe this stuff. And so when you've got a place, say, for example, like Cannock Chase and Castle Ring, and you've got loads of things going on there, these rich guys and girls would turn up and say, okay, let's build some temples here and do something here, because this channels energy in their way of thinking. And that's what's happening at Castle Ring. You were telling me, weren't you, Gunnar, earlier?
Mm.
I was just wondering, Graham, do you think then that these people at Biddulph Grange were the only ones in the area doing this type of occult research, or do you think it was more widespread among
it was more widespread than that. I mean, there's many places throughout the country that you will find late 19th century follies in the grounds of these stately homes. And the guides and the National Trust of the English Heritage will say, oh, they were just follies. They were just built to have cups of tea in and to entertain guests. You know, and they've got pictures of sort of ancient gods and demons on the walls and magic circles and you name it. And they don't want people to think there's any occult stuff going on. And of course, when they find that people have recorded in their diaries and writings that they performed ceremonies and occult goings on, the English Heritage will and National Trust, and the guides will tell you. And very often you'd put on pageants and plays in these follies that they built. No, they were like the poor people would be using their Ouija boards. The rich would be building temples and doing occult ceremonies. It was a fad in the late 19th century.
And do you know what it really reminds me of? What you were talking about there is Parham House, which is down in West Sussex. But Parham House houses Old Man Canck. He was moved from
This is the statue, Chris, that was at Hagley Hall, of course.
Old Man Canck, the spirit of the Seven Springs in Rugeley. But not only that, is Old Man Canck is situated next to two sphinxes looking at each other, opposite a lake with images of Pan all over the lake bridge, and facing also a small building called Cannock House, which is on the lake, next to the lake. And inside the walled gardens, what the two sphinxes guard, there is a little alcove with the most bizarre symbol I've ever seen on it. It's got two skulls and then a crest of two crests of arms, which are not anywhere else in the house, in plaster relief on the back of it, with two drunk cherubs either side.
What? So this statue, Canck, who you think might have been Canute?
Yes, we believe it might be named after him.
Or we think an older deity that got renamed.
After whom he was named, for example.
Yeah.
And this used to stand near Castle Ring.
This used to stand in the grounds of Hagley Hall, which is smack bang in the centre of Rugeley. Hagley Hall was originally funded, I think, by the Weston family. It was then passed to Ashton Curzon, who I believe was an MP at the time. He then, in the 1750s, had James Athenian Stewart, I think it was, or Wyatt, who was the guy who built all of the weird, esoteric kind of architecture at at Shugborough Hall. He then came and built an octagonal tower similar to the one at Shugborough Hall, which was directly above this so-called folly, this underground temple, which happens to be. So it's very much. It looks to me like almost to be like a Hellfire Club.
One of the springs as well, isn't it, Gunnar? One of the springs, one of the seven springs goes directly through it.
One of the
which comes from Castle Ring is slightly the other side, but it's
this is
it's
weird,
all within
right?
the area.
Chris,
so this is occultism that's going on in the 1700s rather than the 1800s, at the same time as the Hellfire Club down at High Wycombe.
Yes. Now Castle Ring and Redbrook finishes at Hawksyard Priory, Chris, which was an old monastery. The Seven Springs finishes at Hagley Hall, I think, at Shugborough Hall. I think there's another stream that leads into Hagley Hall, isn't there? There's another one that leads also into Weston, I think, which is the Rising Brook. So it's almost like they seem to be building, and I think also probably Biddulph Grange probably factors into this as well, Graham. It seems to be that they were building these temples on all of these strange kind of spaces. And they were putting these deities there. They were building sort of underground temples similarly to these things. So it's really, really bizarre that we find Old Man Canck sitting at the head. Bearing in mind, obviously, the very famous kind of supernatural tale of old Canute, which was that he tried to turn back the tide. Of course, we misremember that. And what he actually did was when he actually said was, I can't turn back the tide because I'm just a man. I think what he was actually doing was kind of casting shade, really, wasn't he, on the people that followed him and fawned over him. He's like, look, I'm not a god, I'm just a man. Obviously, we misremember that now. We look at that instance now and think that he was trying to. But it's weird that you find him at this connection with this sort of this control of water. Of course, Slitting Mill, which is just above the Horns Pools, Chris, which are all connected to Hagley Hall, was the original splitting mill in the UK, I think, which obviously where they use the power of the water to split the iron to make, more often than not, nails, I believe it was. But obviously they controlled all of this water, and then they build this temple in the middle of a lake underneath a massive house. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Graham, but you wouldn't kind of undermine your own house, would you? Really? To build this thing if it was just a folly?
No, it sounds like they were building something on something that was originally there, and islands in the middle of lakes were considered sacred, certainly to the Celts, and then the thing was kept going for the Vikings and the Anglo-Saxons. What exactly? This Canck character, if he was a god, could have been a water god or a sea god or whatever for the Vikings. What does this statue look like?
He's actually, Chris.
Greek.
It's Greek, so it's actually a minor water deity, is it? I think.
Was he like a merman with a tail, or? or has
He's
he
not got a
fire?
tail, no.
He's the reclining Greek statue, isn't he? Pouring water, I believe.
Yeah,
Something similar.
He's bearded, reclining, pouring water.
Now the bridge that he sat on was old Father Cannock Bridge, which I believe was made in 1752 by a guy called John Ibstock, I believe it was, from Northwich. So we're kind of looking at, but as you go down there, weirdly, there's all of these kind of sort of fluted kind of frills around the side of it that look like water and stuff. And then obviously Old Man Cank sat on it. They've kind of controlled all this water, and it looks very, very bizarre, to be honest. But this is where we're at the moment, isn't it, Chris? Kind of delving into this story, because we believe there was something much, much bigger going on there, to be honest. It certainly alludes to it anyway. But of course, I think the place was kind of demolished in 1932. It was actually moved to America, believe it or not. The catacombs or the underground temple still exists. It's closed off now, of course. But above ground, there's absolutely no kind of sign of it, other than perhaps a very scratchy, slightly thorn-laden walk through the old gardens. But you can find there's an old herb garden there. There's the old bridge with Cank on it. There's all this kind of strange symbolism as well hanging around the place. So, yeah, I'm kind of wondering what this may all be connected to.
Well, I know that what's very strange is that going back a few years, when I was looking into Cannock Chase for a whole other reason, some research, I never found anything about a Sasquatch or Bigfoot being seen. It was there was dogs, like we talked about, there was big cats and so on. I went, myself and a few friends decided to make a spoof documentary just for a laugh, about Bigfoot, right? And it wasn't supposed to be on Cannock Chase. It was just that was the nearest woods to where we were to actually dress up in a gorilla suit and be filmed walking through the woods. It wasn't meant as a hoax. It was just part of this daft film we were doing. And people saw us. And that week in the local papers, there was the Bigfoot spotted on Cannock Chase.
It was you.
It was
Now,
you,
the thing is that since then, loads of people have made, I've never done it, I only did it once, loads of people have claimed to have seen Bigfoot all over areas of Cannock Chase. And people who are not some crazy drunken people who just come out of a pub, sensible people whose word would be taken in a court of law, like lawyers, police officers and so forth. Did I somehow sort of create this Sasquatch of Cannock Chase? And maybe because suddenly now, I mean, people say that they're seeing these dark-eyed girls, these Japanese ghost girls. Well, have they only been seen since that became popular? It's very much like Greys, as far as I know, as aliens have only been seen around the world since they were portrayed like that in Close Encounters of the Third Kind in the late 70s. Before that, everyone was calling them blonde-haired, blue-eyed Venusians. Tall ladies with blonde hair and blue eyes looking like models. Then suddenly it was the Greys after. It's almost as if the phenomena itself can change according to people's acceptance level. In the old days, they saw demons or the Virgin Mary. Now it's Japanese ghost girls, gorillas, and, well, whatever else you've got. I think somebody's even seen a floating Superman in Canada. Somebody claimed to see a caped flying man.
Oh, yes.
Look it up online.
Oh, yes. No, because there's some...
I remember this story.
There's some Mothman stories as well, isn't it, from this local area?
Mothman.
Do you believe then that
Mothman.
this paranormal kind of interaction that we may have with our local landscape changes over time as a result of our belief structures? That these two things kind of play into each other?
Yeah, there's something there, some kind of, I don't know, let's just guess. I mean, I might be completely wrong. Some energy coming out the ground created by the rocks, as you said earlier, that people's interaction with it turns it into a phenomena.
I mean, we know
maybe
from...
maybe the water, maybe that's why the Celts venerated it, because
in the first place. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think then that maybe that's what these Victorians or Georgians earlier were tapping into? They were trying to tap into that.
That's what they were trying to do. They realised that weird stuff had gone on there.
Yeah.
They'd found out it had been going on for years and it had changed over the years depending on people's acceptance levels. And now they thought, well, if we bring a load of these different things, Greeks, Romans, Celtic, all this stuff together, let's give it a go and see if we can really make something weird happen. Let's control matter. Let's jump through into another universe. I think that's what they were trying to do.
Graham, I've got to say, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to interview today as well, because this is exactly where we've been, isn't it, for the last few sort of months looking at this. And it's like every time you turn around, it seems to be literally written in the landscape. You know, it's all around you. It's written in your architecture. It's written in your ground. It's written in the history. It's written in the, you know, whatever it is. It's all there. And it seems to be that this was going on all over the place. And like as you just mentioned, Graham, there, I believe that these guys recognised the space was strange, recognised that stuff had gone on there before, and it seemed to be literally like sort of the corner house, penthouse of Spook Central, as they're saying, Ghostbusters. Well, yeah, these guys are like, yeah, they're like, this is the perfect place. Let's start work here, and it seems to be that that's exactly what they did. Coming back to that, though, Graham, I just want to mention the Persinger and Corrin God helmet. What I find interesting about is low strength magnetic fields in this idea of the Persinger and Corrin God helmet. When they're sort of, this helmet's placed on and is shined into the human brain, can create these kind of feelings of paranormal or ghosts or spirits, and this is why I wonder that the landscape itself, that the magnetism of the landscape perhaps has this impact, and maybe we interact with that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, if it's just to affect our minds, then you wouldn't be able to capture some of these things on video, which people have claimed to have done. True. Or are our minds influencing the whatever goes on inside a camera? I don't know. That's what I'd like to find out. I'll try and do more research into that. But how
next interview, Graham, we want an answer.
Push him, Chris. Push him.
Yeah, it's so simple. Come on, Graham. You can do it.
My idea is it's probably the mind that is influenced by these things, and a lot of these things are shared hallucinations, but sometimes physical phenomena can actually take place. But that might be because it's influencing the mind and therefore influencing perhaps telekinetic abilities that some people have. There you go.
And maybe people together, if their minds are affected in a group hallucination, maybe the power of their collective mental strength becomes the physical manifestation.
It may be the answer to things that have been going on through centuries that have started religions in some parts of the world.
Graham, we've got just over a minute left. What are your final thoughts on Cannock Chase? Why is this place one of the most special places in the United Kingdom, if not the world?
Because I live near there.
that's why we like it so much, isn't it, Chris, to be honest? But I think we're exceptionally fortunate to have grown up in a place.
I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea.
So where next then? Where is your research going to take you next? And are you going to come out with me and Chris and investigate some of these mysteries surrounding Hagley Hall?
Well, I've got a book coming out. The next book's coming out all about stone circles.
Brilliant.
So that's all over Britain. And my investigations at the moment are directed upon Cannock Chase and Biddulph Grange.
Awesome. So, and we can find more about your work at grahamphillips.net. That's LLIPS.
Absolutely. And we'll have to take Graham to Hagley Hall as well, Gunnar, if he's up for it.
Yes.
Oh, I'd love to do that.
With this man's history and knowledge, Chris, and the research that he's done, and us kind of got, me and you just kind of starting out in this in the last few years, he's the perfect person, I think, to take along to this adventure, because I think Graham can help us unlock it as well.
Absolutely.
Oh, love to give it a try.
Yes, Graham Phillips, thanks very much for speaking to us today, my friend. Much appreciated. We've loved the chat.
Thank you very much.
And thank you, CK, as well. That was really, really interesting, buddy. Did you enjoy that?
I enjoyed that very much. Graham Phillips, fantastic, wasn't he?
As always, buddy. He's always really good, isn't he? He was
the man,
excellent.
The myth, the legend.
The man, the myth, the legend, Graham Phillips. How cool was that?
Oh, very cool. Incredible stuff.
What did you make about it, dude, in terms of our own research and the things that we've been looking at from Cannock Chase?
Good question. I mean, I think really enlightening, because obviously Graham's got so much research on the kind of stuff that we're interested in and what we've been looking at. And he understands the landscape very well. And
being a local
stuff
author
at Biddulph Grange is just a phenomenal. I found that really interesting.
Do you know, it blew my mind as well when I saw him post about that this week, Chris, because we were just talking about exactly that, weren't we? And we were kind of looking into this mystery of Hagley Hall, and we were talking about some of the underground sort of follies, if you want to call it that are there. And then lo and behold, Graham Phillips. And we've speculated as well. We've talked about this, about the idea that there may be more of these places up and down this kind of valley at the edge of Cannock Chase. And here we are all of a sudden, Biddulph Grange. Graham's unearthed a massive mystery there that kind of dovetails nicely into our kind of mystery that we're looking at into Cannock Chase or Hagley Hall.
It does. I mean, I'd love to go up to Biddulph Grange with Graham as well. If
Yeah.
you know that, I think if nothing else, we need to talk to him about his research, because just incredible stuff. I mean, if you read the Greenstone, there's definitely he produces a lot of evidence for the occult practices that were going on there, and it seems pretty obvious that something was taking place in that house. Or maybe in that garden temple. Absolutely bizarre stuff.
And how curious the link, Chris, as well, regarding the room within a room within a room within a room.
The room within a room within a room within a room, and the sacred spring.
The sacred spring as well. I would suggest that, I mean, what Graham was talking about there is about 100 years after what we were talking about. But I would not be surprised at all if these things were in some way connected.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really keen to find out what's in this room that they found with their ground penetrating radar.
Could you imagine, buddy?
Well, do you think they'll even let a live feed in there, or do you think they'll send archaeologists to go in there first and, shall we say, get rid of anything that they might not want people to see?
Well, Graham himself is saying, isn't it, when he was talking about the Tesseract, and that's really, really interesting in itself as well. I mean, for what purpose would you build a room within a room within a room within a room? It makes no sense. So
the only thing is to hold something potentially dangerous.
Do you think that's what it is? I mean, do you think that they were trying to open portals to other dimensions and perhaps got more than they bargained for?
3 circles, 3 room within a room within a room. The idea of 3 circles, concentric circles, that also ties in very, very much with occult thinking. So it could have an occult symbolism.
Do you know, one of the things I was looking at. Sorry, buddy, I didn't mean to cut you there. One of the things I was looking at regarding Hagley Hall was this idea that spirit can't travel over water. Do you think now?
So
bearing in mind,
prison.
You just mentioned there about Biddulph Grange in North Staffordshire, a room within a room within a room. Does the water provide the same concept? Does it?
So it's like a safe space. So, sometimes people draw like symbols on the ground around
magical symbols for protection and that sort of stuff. Yeah. Were they using the water for the same thing? Like, let's say we unlock something we don't want to necessarily let loose, so let's build it inside this lake where we can contain it. I don't know.
Maybe they needed the power of the water spirit to keep whatever they were trying to open in check. Maybe that's why they were attempting to evoke a water spirit, is that they needed his power, should we say, to keep whatever they were trying to get hold of or trying to open. I get that into it. But I mean, Graham, what do you think? I mean, Graham is just the man of the area, isn't he? He has in the Midlands, certainly, but not just in the Midlands, but worldwide. I mean, his research is interesting. Looking forward to his Stone Circles book. But
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, do you think, what do you think of the man in his research in the area? I can't think of anyone who parallels him, really.
I was about to say exactly the same. I don't know anybody, apart from us, here at the Asylum, who are researching those things to the degree in which he's researching them. I mean, there's a genuine dearth, isn't there, in this area of researchers, of people looking into this type of stuff. But yet we've got Graham, who happens to be one of the world's best authorities on ancient mysteries, and he happens to live in this local area and is looking into that stuff as we speak. So
yeah, hopefully we'll get some more about it. And really keen to strong arm him into the offer that he made of coming out on an investigation with us. We've got it on live on air. It's on camera. He can't deny that he said it. So
I can't say too much about it, but you will know who I'm referring to. I'm looking to bring an extra person on that investigation, let's say.
Okay.
You know who I'm referring to. I won't mention too much about it because I haven't asked him yet. So this is going to go out before I have mentioned to this person before, of course. But I would love to take him. You know what I'm talking about.
Well, I know who you're talking about.
It's done.
I think you. Well,
If anyone
you
can
know,
draw stuff out the landscape, we would have the two best people in
those are the
Europe,
two
fella, in Europe to take down there. I mean,
easily. I can't think of any two people I'd rather have on
exactly.
an investigation into that place. Well, we're going to have to make it happen. We need a same time, same place with both of them. That's the difficult part. Difficult part
I
is going to
have
be getting.
spoke to Graham before we interviewed him tonight. Actually, I did actually mention this to him, and I did sort of give him a little bit of a tip off as to some of the mysteries that we're uncovering down at Hagley Hall in Rugeley. And I did say to him, I said, "Look, I want to take you down there. I want to get you have a look around the area, see what you think, because obviously he's got much more experience than us. But of course, taking paranormal specialist Don Phillips, a man that I've seen pull information out of landscapes that seemingly are just empty landscapes, to be honest, Chris. To see some of the things that I've seen him do. I mean, if there is a mystery there, if there were, let's say, dark things taking place, or there was occult practice, I'm pretty sure, without a doubt, that Don Phillips would draw that out the landscape. And what a better person to translate what may have been taking place in Graham Phillips. I mean, to be honest, mate, the entire world would want to be witness to that. So the fact that me and you were sitting smack bang in the middle of it, helping, is brilliant. I can't wait.
Yeah,
to be
exactly.
honest.
It was just along for the ride, really. But hey, what a ride,
dude! What a ride in that respect.
Yeah, I mean,
because,
this guy, the guy who found King Arthur,
so
real King Arthur.
Now, this is a brilliant story in itself, isn't it? And I love his research methods as well. I love how he kind of there's an element of kind of psychic kind of questing about it. There's an element of good old fashioned solid research as well that he does. And then there's he really kind of he has a full spectrum, doesn't he, of skills for this kind of job. He coined
this phrase before the show when I was chatting to him, and I think this is a brilliant phrase. He called holistic history, which I think should be the title of Graham's next TV show. I think he should have a TV show called Holistic History.
What does holistic history mean?
Looking at every angle. So looking at the folklore, looking at the occult stuff, looking at the landscape, looking at the names of places, looking at the historical research, like putting it all together, rather than saying this discipline, this discipline, this discipline, what can we learn from each? He's just saying, I'm going to look at everything and we'll try and make conclusions based on everything.
Do you know, Chris, that's really fascinating, because one of the things that I think when I watch Graham work is this ability that he has to use kind of, you might call it intuition, you might call it a hunch, you might call it psychic ability, but there are elements where he kind of feels the story. He kind of knows where to go next. Now, the weird thing is we've been investigating this when I've been investigating Lachine House in Ireland, when I've been investigating Hagley Hall, when I've been investigating Shugborough, the way in which certain things seem to drop out of the sky for you. When you're doing decent research, when you're doing certain things that you might call it hunch, you might call it whatever, but how do some of these things happen? And Graham has that ability, doesn't he? He has not only the hardcore research, the academic background almost, but he's also got this element of he's got a great eye for a story, and he's got a great eye for a hunch as well.
Yeah, and it's like the other fella you named. Certain people are catalysts, I think. They make things happen. And I think Graham is very much one of those guys. He makes things happen because, sometimes when you're a researcher, this is the problem with research, is that you can read as many books as you can, you can talk to as many people as you can, but there are dead ends you're going to run into. There are closed doors. There are books that you won't be able to read. There are places you won't be able to visit. All of that stuff means you're going to need at some point to be able to rely upon your instincts.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Further. Absolutely, Chris. That's what I'm saying. There are some points where Graham kind of goes into that element of a hunch, which you might class as being psychic ability. That I mean, when you talk about the idea of the greenstone and how he came, what was the place? Was it Hatherton House where he finds the mural behind the wall of King Arthur holding the sword up like this?
That's an incredible story. If you haven't read that book, read that book.
If you can get hold of a copy.
I'd also like to read. It's actually, if you look around, it's more. It's easier to buy than when it was a couple of years ago now. But I would also like to read Andrew Collins' version of that research, The Seventh Sword.
The Seventh Sword, yeah, because that came as a direct result of what happened in the Greenstone, didn't it? So in the Greenstone, and it's so bizarre as well where he took these chances, because they kind of find this mural behind this wall when they're looking for this Greenstone, and there's King Arthur holding aloft Excalibur with the Greenstone in it, and he's surrounded by 12 heroes, I think, of antiquity, is it? And behind him on the hill are the kings, the Knights Templar, basically, or the Round Table, or whatever it is. And And then he basically goes to he looks on a map, doesn't he? Finds King Arthur's Bridge. He finds the Knights Templar Hill or whatever it's called as well. And he goes, right, well, let's go down there and have a look. And then when he get there, he kind of goes, right, well, he was looking down and to the right and there were 12 people. So let's count 12 bricks down and 12 bricks to the left. Pulls out the brick and behind it is a 500-year-old sword. Now,
easy. As easy as that.
Easy.
Well, you know what?
And that's kind of half and half good investigation and half and half.
He's that detective that goes on,
Yeah.
I got a hunch, boss. You got to let me go with it.
I was joking about this when I was with Don in America. It's Columbo, isn't it? Just one more thing.
I just want more thing. I just wanted to find it. I just got this hunch, and I can't let it go. So King Arthur.
King Arthur. I just want to ask you about King Arthur. Who is he? What is he?
How many stones should we move? We'll go 12 stones left, 12 stones up. Okay, we got some. But he is that, he, like you say, he makes things happen. He's one of those guys. I'm interesting that you say Templars. I'm a bit gutted we didn't get a chance today.
So true.
Another one in the Midlands that he believes the last Templar and the last Templar treasure were in the Midlands.
Now, dude, because we didn't discuss this, but I wanted to ask this as well. He mentioned the Rosicrucians. And there's a legend, there's an idea about the Rosicrucians. This burial may actually be in Staffordshire is it RNK Rosencreutz, whatever his name is, I think.
Yeah, we've done a bit of investigating down that rabbit hole as well, but that seems to be what was it called? A chimera story.
Yes, a chimera. So
the latest incantation. One incantation of it is that it's in Staffordshire.
And one of the places that it's believed it may be, of course, is indeed Hagley Hall, Chris. I don't believe that to be true.
No,
I don't believe that's what we're dealing with. But
maybe something Rosicrucian going on there.
That's a whole nother level of research that I need to do for this local area as well.
I think we'll go and see the place first. Let's go and see the place first, and then we'll talk about Rosicrucianism and stuff like that. Stay tuned for that Asylum viewers. We will be taking Graham Phillips and hopefully Don Phillips, the Phillips boys. Don't say that to Don. He definitely won't come.
Well, one's one L and one's two L's, isn't it?
Yeah,
so it's
exactly.
Identical surname, bar one L.
Yeah, bar one L. So, I think we'll have to go down there. We'll have to have a look and make a little video for the people out there.
Oh, dude, what a video that would be! Taking a paranormal investigator specialist, Don Phillips, and of course, world-renowned researcher and author Graham Phillips down there to kind of unlock some of these mysteries.
Graham Phillips.
Dude, how cool would that look? That'd be an amazing piece of video to do.
Well,
and I genuinely believe,
don't have me and you in them.
Oh, of course, mate. I genuinely believe, though, that we're close to unlocking a very deep mystery here. I think that we are onto something. I think there is something going on at Hagley Hall. I think that our research has been decent up until this point. I think we've very much kind of brought in this element of the hunch aspect and this psychic aspect. There are some of the best links that we've made have been purely serendipitous or purely kind of based off,
it seems to entice Graham Phillips as well. And I think if you can the story's got to be good, and the information's got to be good to get a guy like that interested. I think he's not interested in
I agree.
Rubbish.
I agree. I think
things that he thinks have no merit.
There's probably enough in that story, isn't there, to suggest that it's kind of piqued his interest. It's like, yes, you may be onto something. It's like, it's got all the hallmarks, dude. It's got all the hallmarks for this occult practice. I mean, again, I come back to this idea of why would you build a folly? Why would you build an underground temple underneath your brand new house that you've just bought, which is worth millions? Why would you undermine that and potentially risk, bringing the whole thing down just to create a cellar or a folly? If it was under a normal house,
one of the things I like about Graham's research is that he's not afraid to look at that paranormal aspect. It's just as important to him as the book research or as looking at the buildings and the architecture.
I don't think anybody's ever looked at that paranormal aspect, Chris, for Hagley Hall before. Not in the sense that we have, and it's like I say, it's got all the hallmarks of a Hellfire Club. There's these weird deities, there's a control and flow of water, which we know, could be used in magic. As we mentioned to Graham there, there's these societies and these people that were, the people that were involved in this, Chris. The Ashton Kerrs and these people were MPs, they were powerful politicians.
Yeah,
we're talking about
I think as well, we should try and get Graham Phillips to take us up to Biddulph. And do a little special for us up at Biddulph if we can.
That'd be brilliant. That'd be brilliant. I'll see if that girl wants to go on another date, shall I?
You can try that. You can try whatever works, man. Whatever works.
Dude, the only date I want is Graham Phillips right now.
That'll do us. We'll have to see if we can make it happen.
I do. I'd like to go. I'd like to take a day out with him. We're going to go out with Don Phillips and do some investigating on Cannock Chase, some mysteries that we've got to unlock there. But I would like to take them both to Castle Ring. I'd like to take them both to Hagley. I'd like to take Don to Biddulph Grange as well. I think what little team that would make, fella. It'd be amazing. It would, wouldn't the four of us kind of psychically question. We'll bring on Andrew Collins as well. Just add to the list. 3 absolute legends in the field, of course. Chris and me and you. What better possible thing could we ever hope
go
to
any
do?
better than that. Right, we better make it happen.
We do. We better make it happen, dude. We better get out of here as well because we've run out of time as always here on the Asylum. So thanks very much, buddy, for a fascinating interview tonight.
Thank you, and thank Graham very much.
Absolutely. We've been waiting to kind of get into this Cannock Chase mystery stuff with him a little bit, haven't we? And I tell you what, buddy, I don't think tonight was long enough. I think that this is a second and a third. Yeah, we barely scratched the surface. I mean, for those that don't know much about Cannock Chase, we literally touched a tiny little section of it tonight. Kind of give you an overview and a snippet of some of the weird occult mysteries that date back from the Victorian times and some of the stranger, more esoteric mysteries that go right the way back through history in Cannock Chase.
Absolutely. And, I think we have to get Graham back on and talk about it more.
Dude, we need to get him out there. That's what
Absolutely.
I'm saying. We need to get him out there. CK, peace out, be lucky. Thanks for talking to us today, fella. Thanks for a lovely interview, my friend. You look great in your little...
Oh, yeah. My Megalithomania t-shirt.
No, I thought, what was that weird skull cap thing you got wearing? What's that?
My beanie.
Your beanie. Where's this come from?
Billabong shop.
Oh, right. I thought you'd have bought it back from some far-flung Megalithomania kind of place in
Australia.
Oh, okay. Billabong shop in Australia. The authentic Billabong shop then, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
CK, thanks very much, buddy. Looking awesome, as always. Great interview. I can't wait to put this one up. I can't wait to go out and investigating. Next week, we rock on as well. We should have the guys from Santa Cruz Ghost Hunters and Don Phillips talking about what happened in America soon as well.
Awesome. Sounds good. Can't wait.
Plenty to come. Peace out. Be lucky. Have a fabulous week, whatever you do. Me and CK will be back next week. Same time, 10 until 1, live on the YouTube channels. Also coming up on Deprogram Radio very shortly, CK, as well.
Yes.
The Asylum. Take it easy.
Asylum.